The morning sun painted the sky of New Harmony in soft purple and gold colors. Sarah Kim stepped out of her house and breathed in the fresh air. She had lived on this planet for 15 years now, and every morning still felt like a gift. The air smelled like flowers and rain, nothing like the recycled air back on Earth. New Harmony was the best thing humans had ever built outside their home planet. 2.5 million people called this world home. They had turned a rocky, cold planet into something beautiful. Green grass grew where once there was only stone. Rivers flowed where engineers had carved channels. Cities rose from the ground with gleaming towers and peaceful parks. The native creatures of this world were called Etherians. They looked like living crystals that sang to each other with beautiful sounds. At first, humans and Etherians had been careful around each other. But over time, they became friends. The crystal beings taught humans how to grow special plants that cleaned the air. Humans shared their technology to help Etherians build new crystal homes. Sarah worked at the main communication center. Her job was to send messages back to Earth and receive news from other human colonies. Every day she sent reports about how well New Harmony was doing. The people on Earth loved to hear about their success. That morning started like any other. Sarah walked to work while children played in the streets. Farmers drove their trucks full of fresh food to the markets. The Etherians sang their morning songs, creating music that echoed through the crystal caves near the city. But something was wrong. Sarah noticed it first when she reached her office. The long-range sensors were picking up strange signals from the edge of the solar system. Ships were coming, but they were not human ships. The signals were too strong, too fast. Director Chen, Sarah called to her boss. We have unknown ships approaching. They are not responding to our greeting messages. Director Chen was an older man who had lived through the first days of space travel. He had seen many things, but the look on his face when he saw the sensor data scared Sarah. How many ships? He asked. At least 50, sir. Maybe more. They are moving very fast. Send an emergency message to Earth right now. Tell them we have unknown ships approaching New Harmony. Tell them we might need help. Sarah's fingers moved quickly over her keyboard. She sent the message using the fastest communication system they had. The message would take 2 weeks to reach Earth, but it was the best they could do. The ships kept coming closer. They were big, much bigger than any human ship Sarah had ever seen. They were silver and moved in perfect formation like a pack of hunting animals. When the ships got close enough, the sensors could see them clearly. They looked like weapons designed to kill, nothing else. All citizens of New Harmony, Director Chen spoke into the colony-wide communication system. This is an emergency. Unknown ships are approaching our planet. Please go to your emergency shelters immediately. This is not a drill. People in the streets stopped what they were doing. Parents grabbed their children. Shop owners closed their stores. Everyone had practiced this many times, but no one thought it would really happen. New Harmony was far from any known hostile aliens. They thought they were safe. The Etherians sang warning songs. Their crystal voices created sounds that made the air itself vibrate. They were telling their people to hide deep in the crystal caves. The humans and Etherians had made plans to protect each other if danger ever came. Sarah stayed at her communication station with Director Chen and a few other workers. They had to keep sending messages to Earth and try to contact the approaching ships. Maybe there was still a chance to avoid a fight. Unknown ships, this is New Harmony Colony. Director Chen spoke into the communication system. We are a peaceful settlement. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. The response came in a voice that sounded like metal scraping against stone. Humans of New Harmony, you have been judged unworthy. Your alliance with the crystal creatures violates the natural order. Prepare for cleansing. Cleansing? Sarah whispered. What does that mean? Director Chen's face went pale. It means they are going to try to kill everyone. The first attack came without any more warning. Beams of light shot down from the silver ships. Where the beams touched the ground, everything disappeared. Buildings, trees, people, all turned to dust in seconds. The beautiful cities that had taken decades to build were destroyed in minutes. Sarah tried to send one last message to Earth. Her hands shook as she typed, New Harmony under attack. Silver ships. They came from nowhere. Heavy bombardment. Request immediate. The communication center shook like an earthquake. The lights went out. Emergency power came on, but half the equipment was damaged. Sarah could hear explosions outside. Through the window, she saw the silver ships flying low over the city, destroying everything with their terrible weapons. We have to get to the emergency bunker. Director Chen shouted over the noise. But it was too late. A bright light filled the room. Sarah felt intense heat for just a moment and then nothing. The attack on New Harmony lasted 6 hours. The silver ships worked methodically, destroying every human settlement, every crystal cave where Etherians lived, every sign that life had once flourished on this world. They used weapons that burned so hot they turned rock into glass. When they were finished, New Harmony looked like a ball of melted stone floating in space. 2 weeks later, the emergency message finally reached Earth. The people in the Solar Communications Center read Sarah's last words with growing horror. They tried to contact New Harmony but received only silence. Long-range telescopes turned toward the distant planet, and what they saw made even experienced space officers sick to their stomachs. Admiral Chen Wei stood in the emergency meeting room of the United Earth Defense Council. Around the table sat the leaders of every nation on Earth. The pictures from New Harmony played on the big screen. A world that had been green and beautiful was now a burnt, dead rock. 2.5 million people, Admiral Chen said quietly. Gone. Every human who lived there. Every Etherian who called that world home. All of them murdered by whoever sent those silver ships. President Martinez of the Earth Federation spoke first. Do we know who did this? Our intelligence suggests it was the hegemony, Admiral Chen replied. They are a military alliance of 4 alien species. They have been conquering planets in that region of space for the past 50 years. They see humans as a threat because we make friends with other species instead of conquering them. What are our options? Asked Premier Volkov of the European Union. Admiral Chen looked around the table at each leader. We have one option. The Total War Protocol. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what the Total War Protocol meant. It had never been used before. It meant that Earth would mobilize every resource, every person, every ship for war. It meant that the peaceful exploration of space would stop, and humanity would become something it had never been before, a force of pure vengeance. President Martinez stood up slowly. All in favor of activating the Total War Protocol? Every hand in the room went up. Then it is decided, Admiral Chen said. The hegemony will learn what happens when they murder our people. They will learn what humans are capable of when we stop trying to be peaceful. Outside the meeting room, orders went out to every corner of the solar system. The war for New Harmony had begun. 3 days after the United Earth Council made their decision, the world changed completely. Every television, every radio, every computer screen showed the same message. President Martinez spoke to all of humanity from the White House. Citizens of Earth, she said, our colony of New Harmony has been destroyed by hostile aliens called the hegemony. 2.5 million of our people are dead. Today we activate the Total War Protocol. Every human, every resource, every factory will work toward one goal, making the hegemony pay for what they have done. Within hours, everything on Earth shifted to war production. Car factories stopped making cars and started building spacecraft engines. Computer companies began making targeting systems for weapons. Food processing plants changed their production to create military rations that could last for years in space. But the biggest change happened at recruitment centers around the world. Lines of people stretched for miles. Young men and women, old veterans, even teenagers who had just turned 18. All wanted to join the war effort. They had seen the pictures of New Harmony's burned surface. They wanted revenge. Captain Sarah Voss stood in the main recruitment center in New York City. She was 35 years old and had fought in 3 small wars in space. She had short brown hair and scars on her hands from battles with space pirates near Proxima Centauri. But she had never seen anything like this, ma'am, said a young man who looked barely old enough to shave. I want to join the Space Marines. I want to fight the aliens who killed our people. Sarah looked at his eager face and felt both proud and sad. Son, this war is going to be different from anything we have ever done before. Are you sure you are ready for that? Yes, ma'am. Those monsters killed children on New Harmony. Families. I want to make them pay. Sarah signed his papers, but she knew something he did not. This young man would not become a regular Space Marine. None of these volunteers would. Earth had been preparing for this moment for 20 years, and they had created something that no other species in the galaxy had ever seen, Admiral. Chen Wei called Sarah to a meeting at the Underground Command Center beneath Washington, D.C. She took a high-speed elevator that went down 50 floors below the surface. The hallways were filled with military officers and scientists, all working frantically on secret projects. Captain Voss, Admiral Chen said when she entered his office. "You have been selected for a special program. What I am about to show you is classified at the highest level. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." The Admiral led her to another elevator, this one going even deeper underground. 20 years ago, we realized that humanity might face enemies in space who were stronger, faster, and more advanced than us. So we began a project to level the playing field. The elevator stopped at a floor that Sarah's security clearance had never allowed her to visit. The doors opened to reveal something that took her breath away. The room was enormous, bigger than a football stadium. In it were rows and rows of what looked like giant test tubes filled with blue liquid. But floating in those tubes were not normal humans. These people were huge, at least 7 feet tall. Their muscles were clearly visible even through the liquid. Cables and wires connected to their heads and bodies. "Welcome to the Warmaker program," Admiral Chen said. "These are not normal soldiers. They are the result of 20 years of genetic engineering, cybernetic enhancement, and psychological conditioning. Each one is worth 100 regular soldiers in combat." Sarah walked closer to one of the tubes. The person inside was a woman with silver hair and skin that looked like it had metal fibers running through it. Her eyes were closed, but Sarah could see they had been replaced with artificial ones that glowed faintly blue. "How many are there?" Sarah asked. 800,000. They have been growing and training in facilities on the Moon, Mars, and Titan. Each one has been programmed with every fighting technique we know. Their bones are reinforced with carbon fiber. Their muscles are enhanced with synthetic fibers that make them 5 times stronger than normal humans. Their brains have been connected to quantum computers that give them perfect tactical awareness. A scientist in a white coat approached them. "Admiral, we are ready to begin the awakening process. Should we proceed?" "Yes, Dr. Williams. It is time." The scientist pressed a button on his tablet. All around the enormous room, the blue liquid in the tubes began to drain away. The enhanced humans inside started to move. Their artificial eyes opened, glowing brighter. One by one, the tubes opened with a hissing sound. The first Warmaker to step out was a man who looked like he could bend steel with his bare hands. His skin had a slight metallic shine to it. When he breathed, Sarah could hear the faint sound of machinery inside his chest. He looked at Admiral Chen and spoke in a voice that sounded both human and artificial. "Admiral, Unit Designation Alpha 1 is online and ready for combat. What are our orders?" "Your orders are simple," Admiral Chen replied. "The hegemony destroyed New Harmony and murdered our people. You and your fellow Warmakers will make them pay for that crime." Alpha 1 nodded. "Understood, sir." "Where is the enemy?" "The Vega system, about 27 light years from here. We are assembling the largest military fleet in human history to take you there." Over the next several days, Sarah watched as all 800,000 Warmakers were awakened. Each one was given weapons that looked like they belonged in a science fiction movie. Their rifles could shoot energy beams that could melt through tank armor. Their armor was made from materials that could stop almost any attack. Some of them carried weapons that could level entire city blocks. But the weapons were not the most frightening thing about the Warmakers. It was how they moved together. When one of them learned something, they all learned it instantly, through their quantum computer connections. When they practiced fighting, they moved like parts of a single, deadly machine. Sarah was assigned to oversee the training of Battalion 437. These particular Warmakers specialized in close combat and urban warfare. She watched them practice fighting against holographic enemies that looked like the alien species in the hegemony. "Captain," said one of the Warmakers, a woman designated as Delta 219. "Our tactical analysis suggests that hegemony forces rely on psychic coordination between their different species. How do we counter this advantage?" "Your quantum connections are faster and more secure than their psychic links," Sarah explained. "Plus, you can think and react much faster than normal humans. The enemy has never faced anything like you before." The Warmaker nodded. "We understand. We will use their overconfidence against them." As the training continued, more and more ships arrived in Earth orbit. The fleet that was assembling was beyond anything humanity had ever built before. Massive dreadnought ships that could destroy entire cities. Fast attack ships that could outrun anything the hegemony had. Support ships filled with supplies for a war that might last years. Admiral Chen called another meeting with his senior officers. The room was filled with the best military minds humanity had ever produced. On the big screen was a map of space showing the route to the Vega system. "Ladies and gentlemen," Admiral Chen said, "Operation Righteous Fury is ready to begin. We have 10,000 ships and 800,000 Warmakers. Our intelligence tells us that the hegemony has been building up their forces in the Vega system, thinking we will never strike back at them. Sir, asked General Morrison, what if they surrender when they see the size of our fleet? Admiral Chen's face grew hard. Then we will accept their surrender and put their leaders on trial for genocide. But if they choose to fight, we will show them what happens when you murder innocent humans. Captain Voss raised her hand. Admiral, what about the other alien species in that region? The ones who are not part of the hegemony? We will make it clear that we are only at war with the hegemony. Any species that wants to stay neutral or help us will be treated as friends. But anyone who helps the hegemony will be considered an enemy. The meeting ended with final preparations for departure. Sarah returned to her battalion of Warmakers. They were all standing in perfect formation, their glowing eyes focused on her. Warmakers, she said. Tomorrow we leave for the Vega system. We go to seek justice for New Harmony. We go to make sure that no other innocent people suffer what our colonists suffered. Are you ready? 800 voices spoke as one. We are ready, Captain. The enemy will learn what human justice looks like. That night, Sarah stood at the window of the space station and looked down at Earth. The planet blazed with lights as billions of people worked around the clock to support the war effort. Ships launched from the surface every few minutes, carrying supplies and reinforcements to the fleet. Humanity had been peaceful explorers and colonists for over a century. They had always tried to make friends with the aliens they met. They had shared their technology and culture with anyone who wanted to learn. But now the galaxy would see a different side of humanity. The hegemony had awakened something that had been sleeping in the human spirit. They would learn that while humans preferred peace, they were very, very good at war. The human fleet left Earth on a cold morning in March. 10,000 ships of every size and type rose from the planet and nearby space stations. The largest ships were the dreadnoughts, massive vessels that looked like flying cities. They carried the heavy weapons that could destroy enemy space stations and planetary defenses. Captain Sarah Voss stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, one of the main troop transport ships. Through the windows, she could see hundreds of other ships in perfect formation. Each ship carried thousands of Warmakers and all the equipment they would need for the coming war. The journey to the Vega system would take 8 months, even with the fastest engines humanity had ever built. But the Warmakers did not waste this time. Every day they trained in massive combat simulators that recreated every possible battle scenario. Sarah walked through the training decks of her ship. In one room, 50 Warmakers practiced urban combat against holographic enemies. The aliens they fought looked like the real hegemony species. Tall reptiles with claws and teeth, insect creatures with razor-sharp limbs, ghostly beings that could phase through walls, and massive rock-like monsters that could smash through buildings. Target eliminated, reported Warmaker Delta 219, as she fired her energy rifle at a holographic reptilian enemy. The beam went through the alien's chest and the image disappeared, moving to next objective. What amazed Sarah was how the Warmakers fought together. When one of them spotted an enemy, all the others knew about it instantly through their quantum connections. They moved like parts of a single organism, covering each other perfectly and never making the same mistake twice. In another training room, Warmakers practiced fighting in zero gravity, preparing for battles inside enemy space stations. They flew through the air using small jetpacks, firing their weapons with perfect accuracy while spinning and diving around obstacles. Captain Voss called Warmaker Alpha 1, the leader of her battalion. We have completed today's combat simulations. Request permission to review enemy tactical data. Granted, Sarah replied. What have you learned? Alpha 1's artificial eyes glowed brighter as he accessed the ship's computer. The hegemony relies on 4 main species working together. The Vorthak are their military commanders. They are strong but not very fast. The Zephyrite handle their technology. They are quick but fragile. The Morphlings coordinate their forces using psychic powers. They are dangerous but only at close range. The Titanids are their heavy assault troops. They are huge and tough but not very smart. How will you use this information? We will target the Morphlings first to break their coordination, then eliminate the Zephyrite to disable their technology, then overwhelm the Vorthak commanders, and finally destroy the Titanids, Alpha 1 explained. Each species has weaknesses that the others try to cover, but our speed and coordination will let us exploit those weaknesses faster than they can adapt. While the Warmakers trained, Other humans on the fleet worked on intelligence gathering. Director Kane, a mysterious man who led Earth's spy networks, had been busy for months before the fleet even left Earth. He had agents throughout hegemony space, gathering information about their military bases, their leaders, and their plans. Sarah attended a briefing where Director Kane shared what his spies had learned. The man was thin and pale, with gray hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. He spoke in a quiet voice that somehow made everyone listen carefully. The attack on New Harmony was ordered by War Chancellor Thexvar, the supreme military leader of the hegemony, Kane explained. He is a Vorthak, one of the reptilian species. He saw our friendship with the Etherians as a threat to their expansion plans. On the big screen appeared a picture of Thexvar. He looked like a giant lizard standing on 2 legs with dark green scales and yellow eyes. His uniform was covered with medals and symbols of rank. Thexvar believes that strong species should rule over weak ones, Kane continued. He thinks humans are weak because we make friends instead of conquering. The attack on New Harmony was meant to be a warning to other species not to ally with us. Admiral Chen, who was leading the entire fleet, asked the important question. Where is Thexvar now? He is in the Vega system at the main hegemony military base on Vega Prime, Kane replied. He is building up forces there because he expects us to come for revenge. But he has no idea how large our fleet is or what the Warmakers are capable of. Kane showed them detailed maps of the Vega system. There were 17 planets and the hegemony had military bases on 12 of them. Vega Prime was their main world, where Thexvar had his headquarters in a massive fortress. Our intelligence suggests they have about 2 million soldiers total across all their bases, Kane said. They have been calling in reinforcements from other systems, but they still think this will be a small conflict. They do not understand that we have mobilized our entire civilization for war. What about their fleet? Asked Admiral Chen. About 3,000 ships of various sizes. Their largest ships are powerful, but they are not designed for the kind of coordinated assault we are planning. They expect to fight enemies one at a time, not face a unified attack on multiple worlds simultaneously. As the weeks passed, the human fleet got closer to hegemony space. They began to encounter enemy patrol ships, small groups of alien ships that were watching for any sign of human activity. But these patrols never made it back to report what they had seen. The human stealth ships were invisible to hegemony sensors. They had been designed using technology that bent light and energy around them. These ghost ships would approach the enemy patrols silently, then destroy them with weapons that left no trace. Sarah watched one of these encounters on the ship's main screen. A group of 5 hegemony ships was moving through space, scanning for threats. They had no idea that 20 human stealth ships were surrounding them. Fire, ordered the fleet commander. Beams of pure energy lanced out from empty space. The hegemony ships exploded one by one, destroyed so quickly they could not even send a distress signal. In 30 seconds it was over. No survivors, reported the stealth ship captain. Proceeding to next patrol route, Admiral Chen used these encounters to test human weapons against hegemony defenses. What they learned was encouraging. Human technology had advanced far beyond what the hegemony expected. Their shields could not stop human energy weapons. Their armor was not strong enough to resist human kinetic rounds. Most importantly, their psychic coordination was much slower than human quantum communications. We have a significant technological advantage, Admiral Chen announced to his senior officers, but we cannot get overconfident. The enemy has numbers and experience on their side. This war will be won by tactics and coordination, not just superior weapons. The Warmakers continued their training, but now they could practice against real enemy equipment captured from the patrol ships. They learned how to disable hegemony weapons, how to break through their armor, and how to jam their communications. Sarah watched Warmaker Delta 219 take apart a captured hegemony rifle. Her enhanced fingers moved with incredible speed and precision. The energy-focusing crystal is here, she explained to her squad. If we damage this component, their weapons become useless. How long would it take you to disable 100 enemy weapons? Sarah asked. Delta 219's eyes glowed as she calculated. Approximately 4 minutes, Captain. Less if other Warmakers assist. As they got closer to the Vega system, the human fleet began to spread out. Different groups of ships would attack different targets at the same time. The enemy would not be able to concentrate their forces to defend any single location. Director Kane's spies sent final reports about enemy positions and defenses. The information was detailed down to the exact number of guards at each base and the locations of ammunition storage areas. HFY has fortified Vega Prime with energy shields and defensive satellites, Kane reported. But our intelligence indicates that these defenses are designed to stop a traditional fleet attack, not an assault by enhanced soldiers who can operate behind enemy lines. Admiral Chen gathered all the ship captains for a final briefing before the attack began. The room was filled with humanity's best military leaders, men and women who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Chen said, in 48 hours we will arrive at the Vega system. The enemy is expecting us, but they are not expecting what we are going to do to them. They think this will be a normal space battle between fleets. Instead, we are going to hit them everywhere at once. He pointed to the tactical display showing the entire Vega system. Our stealth ships will disable their early warning systems and orbital defenses. Our main fleet will engage their space forces, and our Warmakers will assault their planetary bases directly. Sir? Asked Captain Rodriguez from the UES Thunder. What if they try to surrender? Admiral Chen's expression became cold. If they surrender unconditionally and agree to turn over their war criminals for trial, we will accept. But if they choose to fight, we will show them the same mercy they showed to the people of New Harmony. The meeting ended with final preparations. Weapons were checked and rechecked. The Warmakers entered their drop pods, special ships designed to carry them from orbit to planetary surfaces. Intelligence reports were updated with the latest information from spies. Sarah stood with he. The attack on the Vega system began in absolute silence. 20 human stealth ships moved through the darkness of space, invisible to every sensor the hegemony possessed. They had been traveling for 3 days at the edge of the system, mapping every defense station, every patrol route, every possible threat. Captain Sarah Voss watched from the bridge of the UES Vengeance as the first phase of Operation Righteous Fury began. On the tactical display, she could see the positions of enemy defense, platforms, massive structures covered with weapons and shields that protected the approaches to hegemony. World's Stealth Squadron reports. Ready? Announced the communications officer. All targets identified and locked. Admiral Chen's voice came through the ship's speakers. All units, this is for New Harmony. Begin Operation Righteous Fury. The first weapons fired were not lasers or missiles, but something far more terrible. The human stealth ships released gravitational mines, devices that created tiny black holes that lasted for only a few seconds. But those few seconds were enough. The hegemony defense platforms, each one the size of a small city, began to tear apart as space itself twisted around them. Metal screamed as it was pulled into impossible shapes. Energy shields collapsed as the very laws of physics were temporarily rewritten in small areas of space. In 15 minutes, the outer defenses of the entire Vega system were destroyed. Not damaged, completely obliterated. The hegemony fleet commanders on the inner planets could only watch in horror as their supposedly impregnable fortifications simply ceased to exist. War Chancellor. HFY stood in his command center on Vega Prime, staring at tactical displays that showed nothing but empty space where his defenses should have been. The reptilian leader's yellow eyes blazed with fury and fear. How is this possible? He hissed at his officers. Where are the human ships? Our sensors detect nothing. His chief intelligence officer, an insectoid zephyrite named Clickstar, consulted his instruments with trembling claws. War Chancellor, we are detecting massive gravitational disturbances but no enemy vessels. It is as if space itself is attacking our defenses. That is impossible. Prepare all fleet units for battle. If the humans want a fight, we will give them one they will never forget. But the hegemony fleet never got the chance to form up for battle. As soon as their ships began moving from their defensive positions, the human main fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel right in the middle of the system. 10,000 human ships appeared simultaneously, their weapons already charged and targeted. The hegemony had never seen anything like it. A fleet so large it looked like a new constellation had suddenly appeared in space. The human dreadnoughts opened fire first. These massive ships carried weapons that could crack planets. Beams of pure energy, each one containing more power than a star, lanced across space toward hegemony targets. Where they hit, enemy ships simply vaporized. All dropships begin planetary assault, Admiral Chen ordered. Warmakers, you are authorized to deploy. This was the moment Sarah had been waiting for. Around her, 800 Warmakers climbed into their drop pods. One-person spacecraft designed to carry enhanced soldiers from orbit to planetary surfaces. Each pod was heavily armored and equipped with stealth technology. Battalion 437, prepare for drop, Sarah announced. Your targets are the military command centers on Vega Prime. Remember your training. Remember New Harmony. Warmaker Alpha 1 nodded to her from his drop pod. We will not fail, Captain. Justice will be served today. The drop began. Hundreds of thousands of pods launched from the human fleet, streaking toward 17 different hegemony worlds like a meteor shower of vengeance. The pods were too small and fast for enemy defenses to stop them all. Most made it through to their targets. Sarah rode in a command pod alongside her Warmakers. Through the small window, she could see Vega Prime growing larger below them. The planet looked like a giant military base. Cities built around weapon factories, spaceports filled with warships, and the massive fortress where Thexvar commanded his forces. The landing was violent. Drop pods slammed into the planet's surface at incredible speed, their armor protecting the soldiers inside from impacts that would have killed normal humans. As soon as they stopped moving, the pods opened and the Warmakers emerged. Sarah's first sight of a hegemony soldier was a Vorthak guard who was running toward their landing site. The reptilian warrior was 8 feet tall, covered in natural armor scales and carrying a weapon that shot bolts of superheated plasma. He looked terrifying. He also died in 3 seconds. Warmaker Delta 219 moved faster than Sarah's eyes could follow. One moment she was climbing out of her drop pod. The next she was standing behind the Vorthak with her energy blade through his spine. The alien warrior collapsed without making a sound. Area secured. Delta 219 reported through the quantum communication network. No enemy survivors. All around the landing zone, similar scenes were playing out. The Warmakers moved through hegemony defenses like a force of nature. Their enhanced speed and strength, combined with their advanced weapons, made them unstoppable against normal soldiers. A squad of Zephyrite technicians tried to set up a heavy weapon to stop the human advance. The insectoid aliens worked with incredible speed, their 6 arms assembling the device in seconds. But the Warmakers were faster. Alpha 1 appeared among them like a ghost. His rifle fired energy bursts that cut through chitin armor as if it were paper. In the time it took the Zephyrite to realize they were under attack, all of them were dead. Weapons emplacement neutralized, Alpha 1 reported. Continuing advance toward primary target. The primary target was Thexvar's fortress. The massive structure rose from the center of the planetary capital, like a mountain of metal and stone. It was protected by energy shields, automated weapons, and thousands of elite guards from all 4 hegemony species. None of that mattered to the Warmakers. Sarah watched in amazement as her enhanced soldiers tore through defenses that should have stopped an army. When they encountered energy shields, they used special devices that overloaded the power systems. When enemy weapons fired at them, they moved too fast to be hit. When they faced superior numbers, they used their perfect coordination to outmaneuver and destroy their opponents. Captain, Alpha 1's voice came through her communicator. We have reached the fortress outer wall. Beginning breach procedures. Sarah looked up at the fortress through her binoculars. The walls were 50 feet thick and made of materials harder than diamond. Conventional weapons would take days to break through. The Warmakers broke through in 10 minutes. They used shaped charges that focused nuclear explosions into beams thinner than pencils. The devices burned perfect holes through the fortress walls. Before the defenders could react, hundreds of enhanced soldiers were pouring through the breaches. Inside the fortress, the battle became a nightmare for the hegemony forces. The Warmakers fought with a coordination that seemed supernatural. When one of them engaged an enemy, others would appear from impossible angles to support the attack. They shared information instantly, so every Warmaker knew the location of every enemy in real time. A squad of Titanid heavy soldiers tried to make a stand in the fortress main hall. These massive rock-like beings were nearly invulnerable to normal weapons. Each one stood 12 feet tall and could crush a car with their bare hands. The Warmakers destroyed them in 30 seconds. Delta 219 used a magnetic accelerator rifle that fired metal slugs at a significant fraction of light speed. The projectiles went completely through the Titanid's rock armor and out the other side. While the giants were staggering from these impacts, other Warmakers attacked their joints with molecular disruptor weapons that broke down the crystalline structures that held their bodies together. Heavy resistance eliminated, Delta 219 reported. Path to command center is clear. Sarah followed the Warmakers through the fortress corridors. The walls were lined with the bodies of hegemony soldiers who had tried to stop the advance. None of them had lasted more than a few seconds against the enhanced humans. They found Thexvar in his command center, surrounded by his remaining officers and guards. The War Chancellor was a massive Vorthak, his scales dark with age and his yellow eyes blazing with hatred. When he saw the humans enter his sanctum, he raised his ceremonial sword and prepared to die fighting. "You dare come to my world, mammals?" he hissed. "I will tear you apart with my own claws." Alpha 1 stepped forward. The enhanced human was smaller than the alien war leader, but when he moved, it was with a speed and precision that made Thexvar's threat seem pathetic. "War Chancellor Thexvar," Alpha 1 said in his artificial voice, "you are under arrest for the crime of genocide against the human colony of New Harmony. Surrender now and you will receive a fair trial." Thexvar laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "Surrender? To weak mammals? I would rather die." He lunged forward with his sword, moving faster than any normal human could react. But Alpha 1 was not a normal human. He caught the alien's wrist in mid-swing and Sarah heard bones breaking. Thexvar's sword clattered to the floor as the War Chancellor collapsed in pain. "Resistance is futile," Alpha 1 said as other Warmakers secured the remaining hegemony officers. "Your military in for 3 days after the fall of Vega Prime." Admiral Chenwei stood before the assembled leaders of 17 conquered hegemony worlds. The meeting was held in the same command center where War Chancellor Thexvar had once planned his campaigns of conquest. Now the reptilian war leader sat in chains waiting for his trial. The room was filled with aliens from all 4 hegemony species, Vorthak military commanders with their scales dulled by defeat, Zephyrite technicians whose compound eyes reflected fear and confusion, Morphling coordinators whose psychic abilities seemed muted by shock, even a few Titanid heavy troopers, their rock-like bodies scarred from battle with the Warmakers. Leaders of the former hegemony, Admiral Chen began, his voice carrying the authority of total victory. "Your military alliance is ended. Your fleets are destroyed. Your weapons factories lie in ruins. You have 2 choices now. Surrender unconditionally and face justice for your crimes, or continue fighting and face complete extinction." The highest-ranking surviving hegemony leader was General Vectar, an elderly Vorthak whose scales were marked with the scars of a dozen wars. He had been Thexvar's second in command and had led the invasion of 6 different star systems over the past 20 years. "Admiral Chen," Vectar said, his voice hoarse with exhaustion, "we surrender. The hegemony formally surrenders to the human forces. We request mercy for our people." "Mercy?" Admiral Chen's eyes hardened. "Did you show mercy to the colonists of New Harmony? Did you show mercy to the Etherians who sang welcome songs to the humans they had learned to trust?" Vectar's head drooped. "No, we did not. However," Admiral Chen continued, "humanity is not like the hegemony. We do not murder civilians. We do not destroy entire worlds. We will show mercy to those who deserve it and justice to those who have committed crimes." He activated a holographic display that showed the terms of surrender. "These are the Vega Accords. You will sign them now, or face the consequences of continued resistance." The terms were harsh but fair. The hegemony alliance was permanently dissolved. All 4 species would give up their offensive military capabilities and submit to human oversight of their activities. They would pay reparations to every species they had attacked or conquered. War criminals would be turned over to an international tribunal for trial. Most importantly, they would never again attack peaceful colonies or threaten innocent civilians. "These terms are acceptable," General Vectar said after consulting with the other leaders. "We will sign." As the surrender ceremony took place, Captain Sarah Voss walked through the streets of the Vega Prime capital with a squad of Warmakers. The city was quiet now, its population staying indoors while human forces maintained order. But there was no resistance, no sabotage, no guerrilla warfare. The hegemony species had learned what humans were capable of when pushed too far. They had no desire to test humanity's patience again. "Captain," Warmaker Alpha 1 reported, "we have completed the census of military installations on this world. All weapon stockpiles have been secured. All military vehicles have been disabled. The population is complying with occupation orders." Sarah nodded. Any sign of organized resistance? None. The local population appears to be relieved that the fighting is over. Many civilians are requesting permission to return to their normal activities. This surprised Sarah. She had expected more anger, more hatred from the conquered aliens. Instead, what she found was exhaustion and, strangely, hope. An elderly Zephyrite approached her cautiously. The insectoid alien's shell was marked with age, and his multiple eyes showed weariness. "Human commander," he said in heavily accented English. "May I speak?" "Go ahead," Sarah replied. "My name is Chitkar. I was a teacher before the war. I taught young Zephyrite about the history of our people." The alien's voice was sad but determined. "I want you to know that not all of us supported the hegemony's actions. Many of us were forced to serve in their military. Many of us disagreed with their policies of conquest and oppression." Sarah studied the old alien's face. "What do you want to tell me? That some of us welcome your victory? The hegemony brought nothing but war and suffering to our worlds. They took our children to fight in their armies. They used our resources to build weapons of destruction. Perhaps now, under human guidance, we can learn to live in peace again." As word of the hegemony's defeat spread throughout the galaxy, something unexpected began to happen. Species that had been terrorized by the Four-Race Alliance for decades started sending messages to the human fleet. Not messages of fear or condemnation, but messages of gratitude and requests for protection. Admiral Chen received ambassadors from dozens of different worlds. Small species that had been forced to pay tribute to the hegemony. Peaceful civilizations that had lived in constant fear of invasion. Even some former hegemony colonies that had been conquered years ago and forced to serve their oppressors. "Admiral," said Ambassador Tissara, a graceful being from the water world of Aquatica, "my people have suffered under hegemony rule for 30 years. They took our children as slaves and our resources as tribute. When we heard that you had defeated them in a single day, we could hardly believe it." The blue-skinned aquatic alien's gills fluttered with emotion. "We would like to request membership in whatever alliance you are creating. We offer our friendship and our loyalty in exchange for protection from future aggressors." Similar requests came from all across the galaxy. Species that had never heard of humans before were asking to join a human-led confederation. They had seen what happened to the hegemony and wanted to be on humanity's side if another war ever broke out. Director Kane, the head of human intelligence, briefed Admiral Chen on the political implications. "Sir, we are receiving alliance requests from 47 different species. If we accept them all, we would be creating the largest interstellar confederation in known galactic history." "What about the species that remain neutral?" Admiral Chen asked. "Most of them are taking a wait-and-see approach. They want to see how we treat our new allies and our former enemies before they make any decisions. But early reports suggest that our reputation for fair treatment is spreading." Admiral Chen made the decision that would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. "We will accept all alliance requests from species that meet our criteria. They must be peaceful. They must respect the rights of other species. And they must be willing to help defend innocent civilians from aggression." The signing ceremony for the new Galactic Confederation took place on New Harmony 2, a world that had been terraformed as a memorial to the destroyed colony. Representatives from 63 different species gathered to create the largest peaceful alliance in galactic history. Sarah stood with her Warmakers as the ceremony began. These enhanced soldiers, who had been created as instruments of war, now served as guardians of peace. They patrolled the space lanes, ensuring that no aggressive species could threaten the Confederation's members. "Today," Admiral Chen said to the assembled delegates, "we establish not just an alliance but a promise that peaceful species will never again face extinction at the hands of conquerors, a promise that friendship and cooperation will be rewarded and protected, a promise that justice will always triumph over tyranny." The Etherian survivors from New Harmony's sister colonies were given places of honor at the ceremony. Their crystal voices sang a memorial song for the lost colonists, a sound of beautiful sadness that brought tears to human eyes, and respectful silence from every alien species present. Elder Harmonist Quilthera, speaking for all surviving Etherians, addressed the gathering. The humans could have chosen vengeance. They could have destroyed the hegemony worlds as their colony was destroyed. Instead, they chose justice. They chose to build rather than destroy. This is why we trust them to lead this new alliance. War Chancellor Thexvar's trial took place 6 months later. The proceedings were broadcast throughout the galaxy, allowing every species to see that justice was being served fairly and transparently. The evidence of his crimes was overwhelming. The destruction of New Harmony, the enslaving of conquered populations, the murder of civilians who resisted hegemony rule. The reptilian war leader showed no remorse. Even facing certain conviction, he remained defiant. "I regret nothing," he declared from the defendant's stand. "The hegemony brought order to chaos. We made the weak serve the strong as nature intended." "Nature intended no such thing," replied Judge Harrison, the human who presided over the tribunal. "Nature intended for intelligent species to grow beyond simple predation, to build civilizations based on cooperation rather than conquest, to protect the innocent rather than exploit them." Thexvar was sentenced to life, imprisonment on a secure facility where he would be forced to see daily reports about the peace and prosperity flourishing under the confederation he had tried to destroy. It was, the judges decided, a more fitting punishment than execution to watch his philosophy of conquest proven wrong by the success of cooperation. General Sarah Voss, she had been promoted after the victory, now commanded the Confederation Defense Force. The 800,000 Warmakers had been supplemented by volunteers from dozens of member species, creating a truly galactic military organization dedicated to protecting peace rather than waging war.